All right, so we're diving into this case, and it's really it's both captivating and heartbreaking. It's the disappearance of Tammy Lynn Leppert. You might remember her. She was a like rising star in the early 80s, kind of a beauty queen turned actress.
Yeah, and she had those roles in Scarface and Spring Break.
Exactly. She was just 18, seemed like, she had it all, right? And then poof, gone. July 1983.
Well, what makes Tammy's story really grab you is, it's not just another missing person case. It's like a mystery, like layers and layers of these really unsettling events. There are people who saw things. They saw this young woman just like
Yeah.
spiraling, into paranoia, and then silence, just nothing.
Yeah, it's so eerie. So let's go back to the beginning. Tammy's life, it wasn't normal, that's for sure. By the time she was a teenager, she'd won, get this, almost 300 beauty pageants. 280 out of 300. That's crazy, right? Even got the CoverGirl magazine cover.
Wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't just luck, right? I mean, that shows some serious drive. And maybe, some influence from her mom, Linda. She was a theatrical agent.
Interesting. Yeah, it's almost like she was, I don't know, like raised for the spotlight, that early exposure, all that performance and competition. Man, that can really mess with a kid. Like, I mean, it could make you ambitious, sure, but also huge pressure. And forget about a normal childhood.
Totally. So from the pageants, Tammy went into acting. She got parts in, like you said, Spring Break, where she was like front and center on the movie poster, and then Scarface. Not a huge role, but, memorable. Her career, it was taken off.
It was, but as her acting career got going, something started happening in Tammy's life. It seems like after this weekend party, things just changed. I mean, they're kind of sketchy about the party itself, but it feels like a turning point.
It does, yeah. It's like someone flipped a switch. Her friend, Wing Flanagan, saw it. This huge change. Tammy became withdrawn, paranoid, just genuinely scared.
Right, and that shift is massive. I mean, what was it about that party? Something she saw, something that happened to her there, or was it something else altogether? Maybe something set off some kind of vulnerability she already had. To get what happened to Tammy, we got to get this descent into paranoia.
Right, and it wasn't just paranoia, it was fear.
Yeah.
Like deep, real terror. Tammy told her mom she believed someone was trying to kill her.
Can you imagine feeling that threatened, so convinced you're going to die, that you tell your own mother? That's not just teenage stuff. That's a young woman terrified for her life.
Chilling. And it got worse. Tammy had a breakdown on the set of Scarface.
Yeah.
They were filming a scene with fake blood, and she just lost it. Total fear. She wouldn't eat or drink, thought everything was poison, even smashed windows at home, in like these panic attacks.
It's like this horrible escalation. It does look like she was really disturbed, but it makes you wonder, right? The doctors, they couldn't find any drugs or alcohol, so it was causing this. Her behavior was so sudden, so dramatic.
Her mom, I mean, she was desperate. She just wanted to understand what was happening to her daughter. So she had her admitted to a mental health facility for like an evaluation.
Right, and that's a key moment. What did they see, those mental health people? During those 72 hours, what were their conclusions? Was there something they missed? We got to consider, was that evaluation enough, given how severe, how sudden her symptoms were?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have those records from that evaluation readily available. What we do know is that Tammy was released after 72 hours without a clear diagnosis or any real explanation for this terrifying behavior.
Yeah, that's a red flag for sure. Was Tammy holding back information, maybe? Or did they underestimate how bad it was? Her condition, I mean. This missing piece, it just adds another layer to this whole thing, this mystery around her disappearance.
For sure. And then, just days after she's released, Tammy vanishes. July 6th, 1983. She leaves her mom's house with this friend, Keith Rogers. They were supposedly going to the beach, but they argued on the drive, and according to Rogers, he dropped her off. Barefoot, no purse, about 5 miles from home. And that's it. That's the last confirmed sighting of Tammy Lynn Leppert.
That's where it all leads back to Keith Rogers, right? He's the last one to see her, alive. That story he tells, the argument, leaving her like that, vulnerable, it needs a closer look. Were there holes in his story? Did his explanation make sense?
And it got that closer look, believe me. Tammy's mother, Linda, she suspected foul play immediately. She knew Tammy wouldn't just run off, especially not without her things, her purse, her shoes. She knew her daughter was terrified, and Linda, she was convinced something awful happened.
It's important, to see that difference. How the police reacted at first and what the family felt. The police, maybe they see so many missing persons, they get jaded. Maybe they thought, oh, another runaway teenager. But her family, they knew Tammy, knew how scared she was. They sensed something way worse.
Yeah, the police, they were slow. They dismissed it at first as a possible runaway. Took them 5 days to even file a missing person report.
5 days, that's a problem. It shows how important it is to take these cases seriously right from the start, especially when there are signs like red flags, unusual things happening, or when a family is certain something's wrong, terribly wrong.
In Tammy's case, well, it was anything but ordinary. As they started investigating, these theories popped up, each one more disturbing than the last. So one of the big theories, that came up involved this really notorious serial killer. Guy was active in Florida back then, Christopher Wilder. They called him the Beauty Queen Killer. Wilder, he went after young women specifically, a lot of times aspiring models. Sound familiar?
Yeah, it's creepy, right, how similar it is. I mean, Tammy being a model and actress, it makes sense that this theory got attention. And her family, they were so sure it was Wilder, they actually sued him. But then they dropped it, the lawsuit, and that just brings up more questions.
It does. So Wilder, he was killed in '84, a shootout with the police.
Hmm.
And they connected him to all these murders, disappearances all over the country, young women. But nothing, no real evidence ever tied him to Tammy's case.
That's the thing with these serial killer theories, They often fit the profile, and here, Wilder, how he did things, it matches Tammy's background. But without something solid, it's just guessing. And then the family, they drop the lawsuit. That adds another layer to it all. They find out something new, something that pointed away from Wilder, or was it something else, something maybe even worse that made him drop it?
It's a dead end, and a disturbing one. Another suspect they looked at was this guy, John Brennan Crutchley, convicted serial killer, called the Vampire Rapist. He was in Florida when Tammy disappeared, and he was well known for being incredibly violent and his sadistic rituals.
Yeah, Crutchley, what he did was horrific, no question. But his MO, it doesn't really line up with what we know about Tammy's case. His
Yeah.
victims, they usually weren't like her, and there's no sign of those ritualistic things he did.
But Crutchley got life in prison in '86, and then he died by suicide in 2002. So yeah, they thought about him, but there's just no direct connection to Tammy. Makes it less likely.
It reminds you, though, back then, Florida, there were so many of these predators active. It made it that much harder to investigate. So many possibilities, and each one worse than the last. But there's this other theory we should talk about, one that hits closer to home and might explain why Tammy became so paranoid.
You mean Tammy's mother's theory?
Exactly. Linda Lippert, she had her own ideas about what happened to her daughter, and it wasn't some random act, some stranger. She thought Tammy stumbled onto something dangerous, something that made her a target.
She believed that Tammy found out about some drug and money laundering operation, local, right there in their area, and that knowing this, it made her a target. That's why she was paranoid, afraid of being poisoned. It's scary to think that Tammy's fear, it wasn't in her head, that it was a real threat.
It does. It adds another dimension to it all. If Tammy was caught up in some criminal thing, her disappearance, it's not just random violence anymore. It's about shutting someone up, someone who knew too much.
And Linda, she was so convinced about this. She wrote a whole screenplay accusing these local bigwigs of being involved in Tammy's disappearance. She wanted to get her daughter's story out there, expose what she thought was the truth.
That screenplay, even if it came from, grief and anger, it might have clues. If there are names in there, places, details about these supposed criminal activities, it could be like a guide for investigators, something to revisit.
Sadly, Linda passed away in 1995, never knowing what happened to her daughter. But her theory and her fight for the truth, it keeps people wondering about Tammy's fate.
So here we are with this unsettling possibility that Tammy Lynn Leppert, this young woman just about to make it big, was silenced because she knew too much. Her behavior changing so suddenly, the fear of poison, her mother believing it was a local conspiracy. It all points to someone stopping her from revealing something dangerous.
And her mother, Linda, who knew Tammy, knew her career, had these very strong suspicions about this criminal element right there where they lived. That adds weight to the theory for sure. Linda's screenplay, even though it was never produced, who knows what's in there? It could be a gold mine of information. Maybe there are details that could kickstart the investigation again.
But we have to admit, even if this theory makes sense, there's no real proof. There's no crime scene, no body, no direct evidence connecting anyone specific to her disappearance. It's just so hard to get closure on this case.
Yeah, the mystery of what happened to Tammy Lynn Leppert. It reminds us, even when things seem glamorous, there can be darkness.
Yeah.
And sometimes, knowing too much, it can have deadly consequences. So here we are at the end of our deep dive into Tammy Lynn Leppert's disappearance. And I don't know about you, but I just feel this sadness and this frustration, This young woman, so full of life, so much potential, and then she's just gone. And all we have are these questions, no answers, and her mother fighting for justice until she died too.
It's really a reminder, isn't it, that life is fragile and that darkness, it can be there even when things seem, bright and promising. It's unsettling to think that some secrets are buried so deep and some truths so well hidden that we might never get justice.
Yeah, it is. But even without knowing for sure, we can learn from Tammy's case, can't we? We can try to see those signs, of fear, of distress in people around us. Take it seriously when someone says they're in danger. And we can push for those thorough investigations, the kind that don't stop until they've looked everywhere.
I agree. And her disappearance, even though it's a mystery, it started conversations about, how vulnerable young women are, especially in the entertainment industry, about the danger of knowing too much and how important it is to hold those in power accountable.
Absolutely. And that conversation, it needs to keep going. If we keep Tammy's memory alive, if we share her story, if we explore this case, all the complexities, then maybe we can raise awareness about those issues that maybe played a role in her fate.
That's right. And Tammy's case, it shows us something else too, the power of just not giving up. Her mother, Linda, she never did, never gave up hope, never stopped looking for answers. That dedication to her daughter, it's remarkable.
It is, and it brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. If Tammy's paranoia, if it was real, what did she know? What was so dangerous? What secrets were big enough to want to silence her? What's still hidden, waiting to be found? These are the questions that remain. These are the questions that keep this mystery alive. The mystery of Tammy Lynn Lippert. What do you think happened to her?